Have you ever paused to think about how close you've been to danger without even knowing it? We guide you through these intense moments, one story at a time. But before you get lost in the narrative, take a moment to like this video and share where you're tuning in from. Now, let's immerse ourselves in these spine-tingling tales. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel to watch my latest videos as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. The Midnight Knocker. In a quiet Texas town, Cedar Vale High School sat on the edge of a sprawling countryside. Known for its strict rules and academic rigor, the school was also infamous for a sinister legend, the story of the Midnight Knocker. For decades, students and staff whispered about the strange entity said to haunt the school after dark. The tale went that if you were inside the school late at night, you might hear a faint knock at the classroom door. Ignore it, and the knocking would grow louder and more insistent. But if you opened the door, you would regret it, for the Midnight Knocker never forgave those who disturbed its domain. The origins of the Midnight Knocker were murky. Some said it was the ghost of a janitor who had died in a tragic accident during a stormy night. Others believed it was a student who had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. The only consistent detail was the warning, never open the door. Over time, the legend became a rite of passage. Students dared one another to stay late in the classrooms, tempting fate to see if the Midnight Knocker would appear. Most claims of encounters were dismissed as pranks or overactive imaginations. But for those who truly believed, the fear was real. One chilly October evening, a group of friends, Emma, Jason, Mia, and Lucas, decided to test the legend. They were part of the school's drama club and had stayed late to work on props for the upcoming play. When they finished, the clock struck 10:30 p.m., and the school was eerily silent. What if we stayed a little longer? Jason suggested with a mischievous grin. See if the knocker shows up? No way, Mia said, shaking her head. That's how horror movies start. Come on, it's just a story, Lucas chimed in. Besides, we're together. What's the worst that could happen? Emma hesitated, but finally agreed. Phoenix, but if anything weird happens, we're out of here. The group chose room 212, a classroom at the end of a long hallway. It was said to be the knocker's favorite haunt. They settled in, dimmed the lights, and waited. At first, everything was quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, and the wind howled outside. Lucas pulled out his phone and started filming, while Jason cracked jokes to lighten the mood. But as the clock neared midnight, the atmosphere grew heavy. Then it happened. A soft knock echoed from the door. Talp, talp, talp. The friends froze. Did you hear that? Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. It's probably just the wind, Jason said, though he sounded less sure than usual. Talp, talp, talp. The knocking came again, louder this time. Maybe it's the janitor, Mia suggested, though the fear in her eyes betrayed her words. Let's check it out, Lucas said, standing up. Are you crazy? Emma hissed. We're not supposed to open the door. But Lucas was already moving. He approached the door slowly, his hand reaching for the knob. The others held their breath as he pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. The faint hum of the school's heating system was the only sound. Lucas turned back to the group with a sheepish grin. See? Nothing to worry about. As he closed the door, a loud bang erupted, making them all jump. It came from the window at the back of the room. The friends spun around, but there was nothing there. Let's leave, Mia said, grabbing her bag. This isn't funny anymore. Before anyone could respond, the knocking resumed, more forceful now. Talp, talp, talp. Who's there? Jason called, his voice trembling. The knocking stopped. A chilling silence filled the room. Emma pointed to the window. Look, a shadowy figure stood just outside the glass, its features obscured. It didn't move, but its presence was palpable, radiating malice. That's not possible, Lucas said. We're on the second floor. The figure began to tap on the glass, the sound sharp and deliberate. Talp, 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 Mia screamed, and the group huddled together near the door. The tapping grew louder, more aggressive, until the glass cracked. Just as it seemed the window would shatter, the figure vanished. We need to get out of here, Emma said, her voice firm. They rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard they pulled, it remained locked. The knocking resumed, this time from the door itself, as if the entity was taunting them. "What do you want?" Jason shouted. The knocking stopped, replaced by a low, guttural whisper. "You opened the door." The friends exchanged terrified glances. Lucas fumbled with his phone, trying to call for help, but there was no signal. The lights flickered, and the air grew colder. The shadowy figure appeared again, this time inside the room. It loomed over them, its form shifting like smoke. Eyes, dark and hollow, stared at them, filled with rage. "Leave us alone!" Mia cried. The figure raised a hand, and the desks in the room flew against the walls. Books toppled from shelves, and the lights shattered, plunging them into darkness. The friends clung to one another, paralyzed with fear. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked, tears streaming down her face. The whisper returned, colder than before. "Because you broke the rule." Summoning her courage, Emma grabbed the emergency flashlight from her bag and shone it directly at the figure. The shadow recoiled, shrieking in pain. Taking advantage of the moment, Lucas kicked the door with all his strength. It finally gave way, and the group bolted into the hallway. They ran through the dark corridors, the sound of heavy footsteps chasing them. The exit seemed impossibly far, but they didn't stop until they burst through the front doors and into the cool night air. The school behind them was silent once more. The next day, the friends recounted their ordeal to the principal, but their story was met with skepticism. No damage was found in room 212, and the security cameras showed nothing unusual. However, Lucas's phone had recorded everything: the knocking, the whispers, and the shadow. Haunted by their experience, the group avoided staying late at school again. They warned others about the midnight knocker, but most dismissed it as another exaggerated ghost story. Still, late at night, when the halls of Cedarvale High were silent, some swore they heard it tap. Top, top. The haunted classroom 306. Blackwood High School was nestled in the heart of a quiet town in Pennsylvania. With its Gothic architecture and ivy-covered walls, the school had always carried an air of mystery. Among the many stories whispered in its hallways, one tale stood out: the legend of Classroom 306. Years ago, Sarah Whitmore was a shy and bright sophomore at Blackwood High. She was an exceptional student, excelling in her classes, but her reserved nature made her an easy target for bullies. A group of popular students began tormenting her daily, mocking her clothes, her quiet demeanor, and even spreading cruel rumors. One winter afternoon, after an especially harsh encounter, Sarah was seen entering classroom 306 alone. She left behind a note that read, "I can't take this anymore." By the time her absence was noticed, it was too late. Sarah had ended her life in the very classroom that had been her refuge from the cruelty of her peers. The tragedy shook the school, but soon, life moved on, and Sarah's name faded from memory. Years after Sarah's death, Classroom 306 developed a reputation. Teachers assigned to the room would often request transfers after reporting unsettling events. The feeling of being watched, inexplicable cold spots, and objects moving on their own. Students shared stories of hearing faint whispers when the room was empty or seeing fleeting shadows out of the corner of their eyes. Despite these tales, the room continued to be used for classes, though it was avoided whenever possible. Over time, it became a rite of passage for students to dare one another to spend a night in Classroom 306. Most never made it past an hour. One Friday evening, a group of 5 students, Jack, Emily, Mia, Liam, and Sophie, decided to uncover the truth. The group was known for their adventurous spirit, and they saw the legend of Classroom 306 as the ultimate challenge. Armed with flashlights, a Ouija board, and a video camera, they sneaked into the school after dark. "Are we really doing this?" Sophie asked, her voice wavering as they approached the door of 306. "Come on, Soph," Jack said with a grin. "It's just an old story. There's nothing to be scared of." They pushed open the door. The room was as ordinary as any other, with rows of desks, a chalkboard, and faded posters of periodic tables and historical figures. Yet, an eerie silence hung in the air, and the temperature seemed to drop the moment they stepped inside. "Let's set up," Liam said, trying to mask his unease. They placed the Ouija board in the center of the room and set the video camera on a tripod. Emily lit a few candles, their flickering light casting long shadows on the walls. The group sat in a circle around the board, placing their fingers lightly on the planchette. Jack took the lead. "Is anyone here with us?" he asked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the planchette began to move. Mia gasped, but Jack smirked. "Very funny, guys. Who's pushing it?" "It's not me," Sophie whispered, her hands trembling. The planchette spelled out, SERH. "Sarah," Emily said softly. "Is it really you?" The planchette moved again. "Why, yes." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Jack, still skeptical, asked, "What do you want?" The response was chilling. HLPME. Before anyone could react, the candles flickered violently, and a loud bang echoed through the room. The chalkboard behind them was now covered in writing, though no one had seen it happen. Scrawled across the board in jagged, chalky letters were the words, "They must know the truth." "What truth?" Emily asked aloud, her voice trembling. The temperature in the room plummeted further, and a guttural moan filled the air. Desks began to rattle, and the video camera toppled over. Panic set in. "We need to leave!" Sophie screamed, scrambling to her feet. "Wait!" Liam shouted. "What if she's trying to tell us something?" But it was too late. The door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The group huddled together, their flashlights flickering as the moaning grew louder, morphing into anguished cries. Out of the shadows emerged a figure, a young girl in a tattered school uniform, her hair disheveled, and her eyes hollow. It was Sarah. "Why won't you listen?" she whispered, her voice filled with sorrow. "They must pay for what they did." "Who?" Emily asked, tears streaming down her face. "Who must pay?" Sarah pointed to the Ouija board. The planchette moved rapidly, spelling out names. The names of the students who had tormented her. But these weren't just names from the past. Among them were names of students still at Blackwood High. "It's happening again," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "Stop them before it's too late." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, and the door creaked open. The group didn't hesitate. They grabbed their things and ran, not stopping until they were safely outside the school. Gasping for breath, they looked back at the building. In the window of classroom 306, they saw Sarah's figure watching them, her expression a mixture of sadness and hope. The next day, the group shared their experience with the principal, who dismissed it as a prank. But when the video footage from their camera was reviewed, it showed the events exactly as they had described. Word spread quickly, and the names Sarah had spelled out were investigated. It turned out those students had been bullying a quiet freshman girl, much like Sarah had been. Thanks to the group's bravery, the bullying was stopped, and the students responsible faced severe consequences. Classroom 306 was finally closed permanently, and a plaque was placed outside to honor Sarah's memory. Yet, even after all this, some say Sarah's spirit lingers, watching over the school to ensure no one else suffers as she did. And on quiet nights, passersby claim to hear faint whispers and see a flicker of light in the window of classroom 306. The shadow in the library. Riverside High School was known for its grand library, a sprawling space filled with towering bookshelves and cozy reading nooks. Built in the early 1900s, the library was a relic of another era, with its creaky wooden floors, stained glass windows, and ornate chandeliers. While students appreciated its charm during the day, by night, the library took on a different aura. For decades, it had been the subject of a chilling legend, the story of the shadow that haunted its halls. The story began in 1928, when a librarian named Margaret Holloway mysteriously disappeared. Margaret was beloved by students and staff alike for her kindness and dedication. One stormy evening, she stayed late to reorganize the archives. When the janitor arrived the next morning, he found the library in disarray. Books scattered across the floor, chairs overturned, and Margaret nowhere to be found. The only clue was a trail of muddy footprints leading to one of the bookshelves, which stopped abruptly, as if she had vanished into thin air. Over the years, students and staff reported strange occurrences. Books would fall from shelves without explanation. Shadows seemed to move on their own. Some claimed to hear faint whispers or the rustle of pages being turned when the library was empty. Most unsettling of all were the sightings. A tall, faceless shadow figure that would appear between the shelves, watching silently. One autumn night, a group of friends, Alex, Jenna, Tyler, and Chloe, decided to test their courage. The four seniors had grown up hearing the stories of the haunted library and saw it as a rite of passage to spend a night there before graduation. "Come on, it's just a story to scare freshmen," Alex said as they stood outside the library door, flashlights in hand. "If it's just a story, why are you so nervous?" Jenna teased, nudging him. "I'm not nervous," Alex replied, his voice a little too high-pitched. Tyler, the most skeptical of the group, rolled his eyes. "Let's get this over with. I've got a chem test to study for tomorrow." Chloe, who had always been fascinated by the paranormal, led the way. "If we're lucky, we might actually see something." The group slipped inside the darkened library. The air was cool and carried the faint scent of old paper and polished wood. Chloe turned on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. They chose a table near the center of the library and unpacked their supplies. Snacks, flashlights, and a digital recorder Chloe had brought to capture any supernatural activity. "Let's split up and explore," Chloe suggested, her excitement barely contained. "Split up? Have you never seen a horror movie?" Jenna said, crossing her arms. "Fine, we'll stay in pairs," Chloe conceded. She and Tyler headed toward the fiction section, while Alex and Jenna explored the archives. As Chloe and Tyler wandered between the shelves, they felt the oppressive silence of the library. Every creak of the floorboards seemed magnified, and the beams of their flashlights barely penetrated the darkness. "So, do you really believe in this stuff?" Tyler asked, keeping his voice low. "I think there are things we can't explain," Chloe replied. "And if Margaret is still here, maybe she's trying to tell us something." As they rounded a corner, Chloe's flashlight flickered. She smacked it against her palm, but the beam went out completely. "Great," she muttered. Tyler's light suddenly dimmed as well, and the temperature seemed to drop. "Did you feel that?" Tyler asked, his breath visible in the cold air. Before Chloe could respond, a book fell from the shelf beside them. They jumped, turning to see a worn copy of Great Expectations lying on the floor. Chloe picked it up and noticed that several pages had been dog-eared. "It's probably just an old book," Tyler said, but his voice betrayed his unease. "Maybe," Chloe murmured, slipping the book into her bag. Meanwhile, Alex and Jenna navigated the labyrinthine archives. The shelves were packed tightly together, and the musty air made Jenna wrinkle her nose. "This place is giving me the creeps," Jenna said, glancing over her shoulder. "You're just imagining things," Alex replied, though he was sticking close to her. They reached the back of the room, where a dusty card catalog stood. As Alex flipped through the cards, Jenna froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" A faint rustling sound came from the far corner of the room. Jenna shone her flashlight toward the noise, but there was nothing there. "Let's go back to the others," she said, grabbing Alex's arm. As they turned to leave, the card catalog drawer slammed shut on its own. Jenna screamed, and Alex bolted, dragging her with him. The group reunited at the central table, their faces pale. "We're not alone," Chloe said, holding up the copy of Great Expectations. "This fell off the shelf by itself." "The card catalog slammed shut on us," Jenna added, still shaken. Before they could compare more notes, the lights in the library flickered, then went out completely. Their flashlights barely illuminated the room as a deep, resonant sound filled the air, like the groan of ancient wood shifting. "What is that?" Alex whispered. From the corner of the room, a shadow began to form. It was tall and indistinct, its edges shifting like smoke. The figure moved slowly toward them, its presence oppressive. "Run!" Tyler shouted. The group scrambled to their feet, but the shadow moved faster. As they reached the door, it slammed shut, trapping them inside. Chloe's digital recorder fell from her bag, the red light blinking as it captured the chaos. "What do you want?" Chloe yelled, her voice trembling. The shadow paused, its head tilting as if considering her question. Then, a voice echoed through the room, low and mournful. "Find me." "Find you? Where?" Chloe asked. The shadow pointed toward the archives before dissolving into the air. The door creaked open, and the oppressive cold lifted. Though terrified, the group felt compelled to follow the shadow's instructions. They returned to the archives, their flashlights trembling in their hands. In the far corner, Chloe noticed a loose floorboard. Together, they pried it up, revealing a small metal box. Inside was Margaret Holloway's diary. The final entries detailed her fear of a man who had been stalking her, a janitor who worked at the school. The last entry read, "If anything happens to me, let this be my truth." The group turned the diary over to the authorities. Further investigation revealed that Margaret's stalker had been a janitor who was dismissed shortly after her disappearance. Though he had passed away decades earlier, the diary provided closure to a mystery that had haunted the school for nearly a century. The sightings of the shadow ceased, and Riverside's library became just a library once more. Yet, late at night, some claimed to hear the faint rustle of pages turning, as if Margaret was still there, watching over her beloved books and ensuring the truth was never forgotten.